Today is Thursday, Parashat Toledot. We're learning the Halakha Pesukah from Chok L'Israel for today. Halakha Pesukah says today, Kashem shechayav Adam lelamed et beno, the same way that a person is obligated to teach his son Torah, kach hu chayav lelamed et ben beno. Also, he has the obligation to teach his grandson, his son's son. Shneimar, like the pasuk says, ve'odatam levanecha ve'nivne vanecha. You will make them known to your children and to your children's children. And in other words, it's not just to teach them, but also if Jewish day schools, there's cost involved. The grandparents can help. That's a great mitzvah because a person is obligated not only to teach his children, but also his grandchildren. Not only his son or his grandson does he have the obligation, or his grandchild, to teach Torah. Ela mitzvah kol chacham v'chacham miYisrael, but rather it's a mitzvah for every sage, every learned person, lelamed et kol hatalmidim, to teach all the students that he's able to teach, af al pi she'enam banav, even though they're not his children, he still has the obligation to teach them. Shneimar, like the pasuk says, v'shinantam levanecha, and you shall teach your children. And from oral tradition we learned, Banecha, your children, Elu talmidecha, these are your students. She'atalmidim, because the students of a person, Keruim banim, they're called his children. Shneimar, like the pasuk says, Vayetzu bnei nevi'im, and the sons of the prophets. And the pasuk there is, they were not the prophets' sons, but rather they were the sons, in terms they were their students, and their students are called their children. And if that's the case, why would a person be commanded, or rather have a mitzvah to teach his son and his grandson specifically, when he has mitzvah to teach every student? The halakha explains, le'akdim beno leben beno, but to teach us that your son would take precedence over your grandson, uben beno leben chavero, and your grandson or your grandchild would take precedence over somebody else. So if you're able to teach only one of them, your son would be the one. And if not your son, then your grandson. And if not your grandson, then other talmidim, other students. But there is an order here. The top priority is the son, second is grandson, third is other students. And you have an obligation, even if it costs money, to hire a teacher for your son. And a teacher or Jewish day school is an obligation even when there is cost involved. But if you teach another student that is not your son or grandson, you do not charge for teaching Torah. We teach Torah for free. So if you had a question, how could it be that the rabbis get compensation, let's say from a school or from a synagogue? And the idea is the time that is involved in teaching, that person, that rabbi, could have spent in another activity earning a living, and the compensation that he gets is in place of earnings that he would have made by being involved in another activity, earning a living throughout the day. So, or for that time that he spends. So that way, it's just to replace the lost opportunity to make funds, to make earnings from another activity. That's what he gets paid. But you don't get paid for teaching Torah, because teaching Torah should be done for free, even though you to hire somebody to teach your son is an obligation, and therefore even if there's a cost involved. Person whose father did not teach him Torah, he has the obligation to teach himself, to learn himself, to hire somebody to teach him, to whatever he needs to do from the moment that he realizes that he should be learning, even though his father did not teach him. Shneimar, like the pasuk says, ulmatem otam, you'll learn the Torah, ushmartem la'asotam, and you'll learn them, you'll learn the mitzvot, and you'll observe to do them. Because usually, makes sense, you learn, and based on your learning, that when you'll be able to apply yourself and do the mitzvot, because through learning you'll come to action. But the action will not bring you to learning. You learn, and then you know how to carry out the mitzvot. So that's the order to do it. What about if he wanted to learn Torah, and also he has a son that needs to learn? Who takes precedence? Who kodem livno? He himself would take precedence over his son. What about if his son was insightful, was very intelligent, and was capable of understanding what he learns even more than the father himself? Then beno kodem. Then his son would take precedence. And if his son has the ability to be able to learn more, and he's more insightful, has more the ability, then his son would take precedent. However, even though his son would be given priority, lo yevatelu, himself should not desist from study. He should still continue to study. The same way that is a mitzvah, a commandment upon him to teach his son, also he's commanded to teach himself. So this halakha psuka was about the importance of learning, of teaching Torah, our children, our grandchildren, other people that we can share Torah knowledge with, and most importantly, ourselves. Sometimes you find people who put all the emphasis on their children learning Torah, but then themselves, even though they send their children to Jewish day schools, they're not involved themselves in learning. But a person should dedicate time to learn Torah also for himself, not just for his children. And if you have knowledge of Torah, if you're a learned person, then you have an obligation to share the knowledge and to teach others. And by the way, that's the greatest chesed that a person can do. The greatest act of kindness is to share knowledge of Torah with others. Baruch Adonai le'olam, amen ve'amen.